So, apparently, creatine isn't just for gym bros anymore. A new meta-analysis found that this supplement we usually associate with muscle-bound 20-somethings might actually be one of our secret weapons for building lean mass and stronger bones after menopause.
Hi there, I'm Tony Lee, and this is Hot Flasher, your daily menopause podcast that serves up fresh news, research, and wellness tips. I've built a daily news pipeline to find the latest on women's health and menopause research. Allow me to introduce my co-host, Nikki, who handles the headlines. Take it away, Nikki.
Thanks, Tony. We've got some solid research to dig into today. I'm starting with that creatine study because it genuinely surprised me. When I think creatine, I picture protein powder containers and weight rooms full of guys grunting through deadlifts. But researchers just published a systematic review and meta-analysis specifically looking at creatine monohydrate in postmenopausal women, and the results are worth paying attention to. The study, published by Nadafa and colleagues, pulled data from multiple trials to see what creatine supplementation actually does for women after menopause. They found improvements in 3 key areas: lean muscle mass, strength, and bone density. That's a pretty compelling trifecta, especially when you consider how much we worry about losing muscle and bone strength as estrogen drops. What I find interesting is that creatine works differently than hormone therapy. It's not trying to replace what we've lost hormonally. Instead, it's giving our muscles more fuel to work with. Creatine helps cells produce energy more efficiently, which can translate to better workouts and potentially better muscle maintenance over time. Now, this doesn't mean creatine is a magic bullet. The improvements they measured were modest, and like any supplement, it's not going to work miracles if you're not also moving your body regularly. But for women who are already doing resistance training or looking to support their muscle and bone health, it's an option that actually has some decent science behind it. The typical dose in these studies was around 3 ultramobilidal CE to 5 grams daily, which is much lower than what you might see marketed to younger athletes. And unlike some supplements that promise the world, creatine has been studied extensively and has a good safety profile for most people. Moving on to something completely different: laser treatments for vaginal health. I know this topic makes some people uncomfortable, but genitourinary syndrome of menopause affects up to 70% of us, so we need to talk about what actually works. A new study by Dogrel followed women with genitourinary syndrome for 2 full years after they received fractional CO2 laser treatment. This is significant because most studies only look at short-term outcomes, maybe 6 months or a year. 2 years gives us a much better picture of whether these treatments have lasting benefits. For those who aren't familiar, genitourinary syndrome includes all those lovely changes that happen to our urogenital tissues when estrogen drops: dryness, irritation, painful sex, urinary issues. The CO2 laser treatment involves using controlled laser energy to stimulate collagen production and improve tissue health in the vaginal area. The 2-year follow-up data showed that many women maintained improvements in symptoms like vaginal dryness and painful intercourse. That's encouraging because one of the big questions with these laser treatments has been durability. Nobody wants to invest time and money in a treatment that stops working after a few months. However, I want to be clear about what this study represents. This was real-world data, not a randomized controlled trial. The women knew they were getting treatment, there was no placebo group, and the researchers weren't blinded to who got what. That doesn't invalidate the findings, but it does mean we need to interpret them carefully. Also, laser treatments aren't cheap, and they're not typically covered by insurance. Most women need multiple sessions, and now we're seeing that some may need maintenance treatments to keep benefits going long term. These are factors worth considering alongside the potential benefits. For women who can't or don't want to use vaginal estrogen, laser treatments might be worth discussing with a gynecologist who has experience with the procedure. But they're not necessarily better than hormonal options, just different. The third piece of research I want to share is about fall risk, and this one has immediate practical applications. A study published in Menopause looked at cognitive and physical tests that can actually predict which postmenopausal women are more likely to fall. Falls are a bigger deal than many of us realise. After menopause, our risk increases not just because of bone density changes, but also because of shifts in balance, muscle strength, and even cognitive processing. This study identified specific simple tests that healthcare providers can use to spot women at higher risk. The researchers found that 2 tests were particularly good at distinguishing between women who had fallen in the past year and those who hadn't. One was called the 3-meter backward walk test, exactly what it sounds like. Women were timed walking backward for 3 meters. The other was a 30-second chair stand test, where you see how many times you can stand up and sit down from a chair in 30 seconds. What made these tests especially valuable is that they challenged both physical and cognitive systems at once. Walking backward requires coordination, balance, and spatial awareness. The chair stands test your legs' strength and power. Women who had fallen before scored worse on both tests compared to those who hadn't fallen. The cognitive component is fascinating. The study showed that it's not just about muscle strength or balance in isolation. It's about how well your brain and body work together, especially when you're doing something that requires attention and coordination. This research suggests that simple screening tests could help identify women who might benefit from balance training, strength work, or other fall prevention strategies before they actually fall and get injured. That's the kind of proactive approach that could make a real difference in quality of life as we age. If you're curious about your own fall risk, these aren't tests you need special equipment for. You could time yourself walking backward in a safe space, or count chair stands for 30 seconds. But remember, this is about identifying potential areas to work on, not diagnosing anything. What ties all 3 of these studies together is that they're looking at practical interventions and assessments for real problems we face after menopause. Whether it's maintaining muscle mass with creatine, addressing vaginal health with laser treatments, or preventing falls with better screening. This is research that could actually translate into better outcomes for women navigating this life stage. The science is getting more specific about what works, for whom, and for how long. And that gives us better information to make decisions that fit our individual situations and priorities.
Thanks for listening to Hot Flasher. We're back tomorrow with more, so don't forget to subscribe. See you tomorrow.